Hi there, Agile friends. Get ready for the World Tour of Agile at the Agile Online Summit 2023. You can join us from October 24th to 26th for a global showcase of cutting-edge Agile practices and insights. Join us at agileonlinesummit.com. This year, we will be featuring some of the best work done around the world and world-class keynotes. You can check all of that at agileonlinesummit.com. But the best part is that your ticket is on us. That's right, it's free to attend and immerse yourself in the world of Agile excellence. Don't miss out on this opportunity to level up your skills and network with peers and industry experts. Mark your calendars and secure your spot at AOS 23 today by visiting agileonlinesummit.com. So get your free ticket or opt for the full digital pass that lets you keep all the conference videos forever and organize, why not, Agile learning sessions at work. You can get the full digital access at agileonlinesummit.com. I'll see you in the conference floor. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And today and this week, the whole week, joining us from the US is Toby Rao. Hey, Toby. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Vasco. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Toby is an ICF-credentialed coach and accredited IC Agile trainer, and also practices as a certified executive coach. With a dynamic Agile journey beginning 2007. Yep. He's an active contributor to the global Agile community. He's based in Washington, D.C. Metro and speaks at Agile events worldwide, especially these times after Corona, I'm sure.
Yes.
He also co-founded the A20 Agile conference and 2 thriving Agile meetups in the Washington, D.C. area with a combined 1,300 members. That's quite a lot of activity in the community. We thank you for that, by the way, Toby. I think it's a very important, generous gift you are, and all of those who participate in the community are giving the rest of us who are learning and practicing Agile and also coaching software development. But
Thank
that
you.
was a short intro. Tell us a bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Yeah, so it goes way back, as I said, in 2007, 2008 period. I was working as a technical project manager in a large government project, and the floor on which we were seated was like huge, almost looked like a stadium. So the section in which my team was sitting, right next to that, there was another team, another program, and I really didn't know them well. I met a couple of people in cafeteria or coffee breaks and stuff like that. So I noticed that every day in the morning, everybody gets together in one corner of the room, and everybody's standing and they're having these conversations. And I always wondered, like, what are they doing? I first thought it's some sort of a demo or some, I had no idea. Interestingly, I could never go to that, go and see what's happening, because around the same time I used to have a meeting. And at some point, my meeting moved to the afternoon and I became available. So what I started doing was, right next to there was an empty chair and a table. So I started going early in the morning and sitting there and started working. In those days, we didn't have laptops, so they were workstations. So it was kind of odd to go and sit there. So, but I would go there with my notebook and my bag and just sit there and just kind of eavesdrop to see what's happening. And what I found out was they were talking about what they worked on the day before and what are their plans for the day, and if they have any problems. I didn't know the word impediment then. So I became very curious. So I started going more often, and nobody noticed me because they were so focused on the conversations. And then I got to know the project manager who was leading that, and then I started seeing, what really struck me was the ease with which people were talking about their problems, and a stark comparison to my project, where I felt that a lot of people were withholding information, and we used to have weekly meetings, and it's so easy to hide problems in a weekly meeting, and they would not surface, and I would not know. So I was very curious, because as a manager in those days, it was very important for me to know where the challenges are, and I did not want to solve all the problems. And here I'm seeing that they are solving the problem themselves, and that was like striking to me. So I started talking to the manager Craig, and it's like, what is this? How do you do this? Like, how did you get started with this? And did you come up with this? And he said, no, 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 this is something called Scrum. So I looked up Scrum, and it came up like a game, and I'm like, so this is like rugby, and I had no idea. But anyway, long story short, I learned more about it, and he mentored me a little bit. So I sampled that in my project, and there was some success with that. I did not know much about it. Fast forward 1 year went by, and then I went and got certified as a CSM. Actually, in 2009, I got certified. But before that, I had started using parts of what they were doing in my meeting. So that's how it got started. And then when I told my leadership that I want to do Scrum, and they said, no, you can't. Our contract is to do in this particular way. And I really wanted to do that. So I actually quit my job and found a job where I could do Scrum, and
And
I
that's where
became a
the
Scrum Master. Yeah.
whole story started.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. And first of all, of course, respect for taking the courage to quit your job. I just interviewed somebody here on the podcast. I believe the episodes went live last week, where they had that. Not the same, of course, but they had that realization that the only way I'm moving forward is if I quit, right? But
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
then, it was hard to make that decision. So
Yeah.
definitely credit
And
to
Vasco,
you.
one thing to note, especially for people who are using Agile or Scrum the last few years. I mean, in the early days, and I think I can qualify it as early days, because organizations and teams were still very new to Agile. So to find a project or work where they're using Scrum was extremely difficult. I lucked out, because there was this organization. Um, it's a government agency. I'm not at liberty to go into more details, but this particular agency government agency wanted to develop their particular initiative and project using Scrum. And they were the first one in that huge organization. And it was a huge database of all the federal employees, basically. So one of the challenges was to find a job where you could do Agile or Scrum. And I think that phase lasted about 2 to 3 years. Like, when that particular project got finished and I was looking for work again, I actually couldn't find an Agile or a Scrum work. And I went back to being a technical PM in another company. But then slowly I start introduced them to Agile and Scrum. So it was more difficult those days than it is now.
Absolutely. So, Toby, when we talk about the early days, of course, we are also talking about our own early days. And
Yes.
today's Monday here on the podcast. So, we want to dive into a difficult moment, a learning experience you went through, but we want to learn how that, the difficult part, how did it go? Where did it come from? And then, of course, also your insights and learnings from that story. So, tell us that story, Toby.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I continue the same story, right? So this was um, the same project, right? They wanted to use Scrum and Agile for their software development. So I started working with the team, as normal, right? All teams go through Tuckman cycle, uh, forming, norming, storming, norming, and then performing. So the initial days, the challenge was to get people to, for example, demos, right? My team in that time,
And you mean the team or the stakeholders?
the stakeholders,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think the biggest challenge was that this team was the only team that was practicing Scrum, and everybody else was still traditional waterfall. So the biggest difficulty that I had as a Scrum Master was for stakeholders to understand the needs that the team has, because it's a rapid 2 week cycle. And if the team needed some help or support, for example, server space, so they said, "Oh, you have to put a requisition in for a server, and you miss the cycle. I mean, the next time you're going to get server space is going to be 6 months from now, because you didn't put the requisition in." It was very difficult for me to kind of explain to the IT people that this is absolutely needed. This is for the work that we are trying to do. So similar patterns were happening, and then everybody was very curious to see what exactly do they do. And every time at the water cooler, or when you go to get coffee, I would talk to other leads, right? For example, the technical lead from another team, or um, so I was also working in a SCIF, which is a secure compartmentalized information facility. So it's highly secure. So all the data that this particular team was using had to come from different sources, and to get the data feed was an extremely difficult thing to do, because there was a huge uh, lack of trust, or they did not want to just share data. So they had to go through a long process of approvals to get that data. So my team was getting impeded with all these problems because of external
And
stakeholders
that
who did
sounds
not understand.
very, very like, how do you say? It sounds like something you would expect to happen in an
Yes.
organization that is just adopting Agile, right? And very often we forget that it's actually not Scrum; it's creating the infrastructure around
Hmm.
Scrum that is also our responsibility. Now, we may not be able to do everything, but of course,
Right.
we want to interface with stakeholders and peers and so on to get those sorted. So, how did you eventually sort that out? Like, did you find like internal allies that would help you to fix those logistic issues or infrastructure issues? Or did you have to go up to a stakeholder, get them involved? How did you sort that out?
Excellent question. Um, so the whole team struggled with that for quite some time. But then what I started doing was, wherever I had problems with either getting data or infrastructure, I started inviting them to demos, and I said, just come for one demo, and I really want you to see how this team operates. So really, the challenge, Vasco, was not the the regulations or the rigidity. It was a mindset, because they did not understand. And I think what I applied was, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And I put myself in their shoes. They've been doing things a certain way for a very long period of time, and I thought, as an agilist, as a scrum master, I should not just expect them to cooperate. I have to get them to understand our needs better, and hopefully that will work. So I started inviting them to demos, and in the demos, the team members naturally said, it's not like I prompted them, but they naturally said that, "Oh, we had this story, but we couldn't do it because this data, we won't get it for
That's
another
what was
3 weeks."
happening after all, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they, when they were doing the demo, say, "Hey, we committed to this, but we only delivered this because we couldn't do that." So when the leads, they saw the challenges that this team was having, it really impacted them, because they went back to their teams and said, "Hey, can you all prioritize and give this data to them? Don't give the whole data set. Work with them and ask them what exactly they need." And and then we negotiated. So I think the negotiation skills also came in, because I think there was a lack of understanding on part of the stakeholders, but also I think it was a lack of us communicating properly with them. They were used to giving huge chunks of data, and we were really asking for CSV format, and we would do all the cleanup ourselves. And we wanted, like 2 months of data at a time. When they understood that our needs are much smaller, and we were willing to do all the work to kind of clean up the data, they said, "Oh, then it's not a problem, we can give it to you." So to answer your question, how the problem was solved was, one, creating a shared understanding of what the challenges is, and then transparency. I think I think some of those folks did not want, in this meeting where there were a lot of higher ups also coming in the demo, they did not want to hear that this team was impeded. I'm saying impeded in quotes because they did not want to be the reason that we were getting delayed. So that had an impact as well. So,
Absolutely.
it took some time, but we got to a stage where we really started getting the cooperation we were looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Great story. Lots of insights there. Thank you for sharing, Toby.
Absolutely.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.